Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. This time round we are, with a certain air of inevitability, bearing in mind the videos I've done on Countachs in the past, doing a video on a Lamborghini Countach, to use the correct phraseology. The word Countach, I've heard 2 or 3 different opinions on this. Valentino Balboni, the celebrated Lamborghini test driver, explained to me that Countach means, oh no, this is too difficult, oh what a problem, oh no, this will never work. It's quite a negative comment in Piedmontese dialect. Other people say it simply means, wow, amazing, you know, which is what apparently the Bertone workers said when they first saw it coming out of the prototype bay. I don't know. But anyway, Countach has been enshrined. In fact, Lamborghini have recently resurrected the name for their 2022 version of the Countach. But here we are, we're talking about the real deal. This is an original car, and this car is of particular sentimental value to me because it's the first ever Countach I worked on in 1988. It was a customer local to me when I had a very small business which could take a maximum of 10 cars. And he rang me and said, I bought a Countach, could you please service it? And I said, oh, let me have a think about that. Yes. The car came in, it's finished in this amazing color. It's an original Lamborghini color called Acapulco Blue, or Blue Acapulco in Italian. And the bodywork is hand-formed aluminium, very much as Marcello Gandini designed it in 1971. And it's amazing to think, here we are 52 years later, it still looks like a spaceship. It is otherworldly, it really is. They went through various generations, the Countachs. This is the LP400 S, high body as it's called, the first of them. And what they realized was, Lamborghini realized was, that people couldn't really fit in them, same as the Miura. So they actually increased the roof height by 50 millimeters. Now, I have been through a lot of this on an earlier video, which I did some time ago, which was a real wonderful moment for me. And that was when we had Ferruccio Lamborghini, Mr. Lamborghini's personal Countach in. It was featured on the show 60 Minutes, the US show in the 1980s, and it had a particular kind of key ring on the key fob, which you could see when Ferruccio was driving it, and it even still had that key fob, that key ring embellishment on the car when I had it in here and worked on it and drove it when it was finished. And that was an amazing privilege, and it came from quite a distance away, and it went to quite a distance away, but it came via here, and we had the honor in the workshop here of bringing Mr. Lamborghini's Countach, his one and only personal car, back to life and recommissioning it. And I was able to do some road test miles in that car, which of course I had to do. Yeah, so please look at that video, particularly the ending, 1 or 2 surprises there. But this car, as I say, it's the first Countach I ever worked on. It's in stunning condition. It's had 3 owners in total, and the second owner owned it for a very long time. He was an English gentleman who I actually knew and spoke to several times on the phone. And the car has done the grand total of 8,060 kilometers from new. That works out at 3,378 miles or thereabouts. That's all the car's done. But with the deterioration of age, it was kept in an airbag type cocoon. Some of the car, the bit of dampness got in there, and we actually did an assessment of the car for Bonham's, the auction house. The gentleman passed away after several decades of owning the car, and the car was put on the market at Bonham's auction. A gentleman from California bought the car unseen, and he sent it back to us, and we have done a partial sympathetic restoration on the car. Ryan, our painter, took all because all these were not quite right. There's a particular width of sealant goes around here. It's a particular type. Certain areas of the car have it, certain areas don't. So basically the car went to Ryan. He stripped all the parts off, repainted them, and we got some photographs to show that work being done to exacting standards. We cooperated, Ryan and myself, on the detail work. He even went to the trouble of getting proper copper pop rivets as opposed to aluminium ones, because that's what Lamborghini used originally to hold the wheel arch liners on. Not aluminium ones or aluminum ones for our stateside friends, but copper ones. So the whole car is reconstructed and put together exactly as Lamborghini built it in the first place. The reason why it needed, we thought we were going to get away with a few blow-ins here and there. We realised that some work had been done on the car, bodywork-wise. It was sort of pretty obvious and irreversible, so we had no choice but to take some of the paintwork back to bare aluminium and start again. But I'm delighted with the results. We've done a full recommissioning on this car. It's now going on a tour to Italy and back, with a lot of other Countaches on a 60th anniversary tour, Countach based, from the UK. So the pressure is on. We brought this car back to life after being in slumber for a number of years. We've made sure the engine is all tickety-boo, carburetors, we've stripped all those, etc. The interior trim is all original and beautiful, as you'd sort of expect, but nevertheless, the car is 43 years old, let's face it, so anything could have happened. But the interior is lovely. When I first worked on it in 1988, the seats were covered in the original factory polythene. It had never been taken off, which was utterly delightful. The interior is beautifully preserved. We brought it back to life, and I've got the arduous task. It does sometimes happen this way, and I'm sure plenty of people will offer to fill this void. I've got the arduous task of doing as many miles or kilometers in this car as is humanly possible in the next week, because we're trying to debug it before this gentleman flies in from the US, jumps in it and does a drive to Sant'Agata Bolognese in Italy, the factory, the Lamborghini factory. To use one of my favorite expressions, what could possibly go wrong? The car's going to be exposed to Italian summer temperatures or close to them, thick end of 40 degrees C, and. So we've tried to mitigate failures as much as we possibly can. Obviously, it's been treated to new tyres. The brakes have all been overhauled. You know, we really have all the perishables, all the cooling system hoses, etc. have been replaced. We haven't had a chance to detail the engine compartment yet. So the engine compartment is factory but scruffy, is how I would describe it. Let's take this car out on the road and let's just do the first few shakedown miles and see how she runs. So I'm just going to pop in here. I'll hop in and we'll take it for a drive. Oh. This is such a young man's game. And there we are. Well, here we are in this car, and I have to say, Countaches don't get any bigger. This is, I may actually have to hold my hand up. I don't know whether this is a low body or a high body Countach. I suspect it's a low body because there really is no room in here. Admittedly, my shadow is not getting any smaller, but even so, I think this is probably one of the last of the low body Countaches. As I mentioned again in the Ferruccio Lamborghini's Countach video, they actually altered the height of the car by about 2 inches, the roof line. So you have a low body and a high body. because people couldn't fit in them. And I remember on one occasion I was driving an LP400, the very first generation of Countach, around the Goodwood racing circuit, and I had to wear a crash helmet as well, as you do, and there was just no room. I was literally driving it like this, less than a car's length behind a camera car, and we were both pressing on, and it was interesting, to say the least. I would put money on the fact that this is a low body car because it is incredibly cramped. But anyway, be that as it may, Countachs are always known for being impractical. But that's sort of not really the point. I remember years ago reading a kit car magazine, and somebody had made a replica of a Countach using a Renault 30 engine, a PRV, Peugeot Renault Volvo V6 as it was called, and they actually had the effrontery to say it drove better than a proper Countach. I'm sure it did up until about 30 miles an hour, but I have at least one customer who's done 180 miles an hour in their Countach on the Italian autostrada. Let me assure you, that would not happen in a Renault engine kit car. These are made to be fast, to look wonderful, but to also go wonderful, which they did. So I'm sort of, gently warming this car up, bringing it to life, and trying to do as many miles in it as possible. Everything's working beautifully. Steering wheel is perfectly lined up, which always pleases me. And we've got something resembling a brake pedal, which is always a plus in Countachs, or any ultra high performance car. And there is no mistaking it. It may not be by today's standards, but it is still a supercar. Yeah, we've had some interesting challenges with this car. The right-hand fuel tank, we had to take that out because the fuel gauge wasn't working, the fuel level gauge. But also it's as well to check because they are aluminium fuel tanks, and they do corrode around the bottom on the outside because they are very sort of get the dirt thrown up by the back wheel, etc. But this is, apart from the firm ride which comes with the Countach, this feels very good. Yeah, I'm very happy with this. The clutch is good. My snag list on this will be very short, as a matter of fact. I'm just going to warm it up a bit more before I extend it a little. Yeah, it's great to be here. When I think when it came in the late 80s, it still had its polythene on the seats, on the interior, and it was the first time I'd driven a Countach, of course. I was a young lad in my 20s then, and I did not know, of course, that all those years later, whatever it is, 35 years later, I'd be sat in the same seat doing the same thing. Incredible. And the engine is pulling beautifully. A lorry driver showing his appreciation there. Yeah, it's amazing. I can feel this car coming to life. Just the way the engine responds, the way the brakes are warming up a bit, and even the ride is smoothing out as the dampers just start. We've had the dampers rebuilt. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're sort of coming to life just as the car, as it all warms up. They're just coming to life and not being quite as rigid, although still working beautifully. This is good. It's quite a scary thing to bring a car that's this that's been in slumber for so long back to life. It really is. We can only predict so much. We can only check so much. I think we've sort of crossed as many T's and dotted as many I's as we can, but it is still quite a task to recommission a car and then for it to do thousands of miles in one trip. However, good job we like a challenge. Well, we're all warmed up now with everywhere to go, so let's just open the taps. Oh yes, there is nothing quite like being in a car with a V12. Yes, Teslas may be wonderfully fastly accelerating, as a lot of electric cars are, but come on, really? Give me a V12 any day of the week. And interestingly, this car is still on its standard exhaust, which is not too loud. So I'm getting the orchestra behind me of tappets, and the oil pump for the engine is just here right behind me, and I can hear all of that going on, which I wouldn't necessarily hear with a sports exhaust. And it brings a whole different blend of sounds, which are pleasing in their own way. You can hear the carbs working, the cams, the valves, the oil pumps, everything. Great feeling, great sensation. Well, as I crouch here looking at this, this really is magnificent paintwork. It is literally like a mirror. It's a pity we're up against it time scale wise because of this tour, etc., because we have got a very interesting diversion coming up into an area that I must admit I have next to no knowledge of, and that's protective film coating on cars. And we're going to be working with somebody who is quite well known, I shall say no more, who has actually gone into this quite seriously and looked at it in some detail. Unfortunately, we were going to try and do it on this car, because a trip to Italy is inevitably going to lead to some stone chips and usage rash, or whatever the expression is, but we just hadn't had time to do it. But be that as it may, we'll get round to it in the future. And I do just want to thank once again everybody who has supported the channel over the last 3.5 years. Thank you very much for your support and your views. And that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video, and we'll be back with something else soon.